Hey guys, it's Kelly from Photography Hero back again to give you a new tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to learn about how to add kind of that pastel green look, that light and airy film look. And I've picked some great images for us. I've picked some great images for us to do. So let's do it. Okay, so when I first began my career, I was shooting film and I loved portrait. That is a Kodak film that really gives kind of a pastel look, especially to the greens. And so I like to get that look in my images even today. One problem with digital photography is that the sensors really kind of saturate and brighten colors to where you almost have this unreal feel to it. And to be honest, when people first began switching from film to digital, they would almost accentuate that. And I even was guilty of that a little bit because we were so used to what the film look was, which was a little bit more muted colors, a little bit more of a flat images, not deep blacks and bright whites, but a little bit more flat. And so when digital came out, it was this new look where everything was explosively bright, and boy, that got old fast, really fast. And now the look that I really like is, again, kind of that nostalgic film look, which is, especially in the greens, more of a muted pastel green, and not really deep blacks and not really bright whites, but a little bit more squished of a dynamic range. And that doesn't mean there's no contrast. That just means that it just has a little bit more of a film look to it. And so we're going to go over that today. And I have some presets that I call fresh air, and those presets basically do that to your images. But I want to teach you how to get that look. You don't have to purchase my fresh air presets to get that look. I want to teach you how to get that look. The presets basically just make it easier to get it quicker. You just choose a preset and boom, everything slides into place. So let's go over that. I've picked some images here that I want to go over on how to get that look. And so these images, I'll just make sure I hit reset. They've all been reset. Okay. And so the things we're going to talk about here on this image, first off, let me just brighten it up just a bit. So this is just out of the camera. Okay, so that's a nice image right there. That looks good. Now you may be wondering what these red splotches are. This is called clipping. If I hit the J key, that goes away. If I hit it again, it brings them back. All those red splotches are doing is showing me where my highlights are clipping off or where there is no detail in the highlights. So I like to leave that on just because, especially when I'm going for the film look, we need to flatten those out so that there is detail through those areas. But back to this image. This is a nice image. I'm going to just pull down just a little bit here just to get a little less warmth. Okay, so I could say this image is done, but what I want to get is I want to really get that pastel green look. So the first thing in getting the film look that we want to do is we want to flatten the image out. And if you look at my histogram, my blacks are pulled away from the wall, but my whites are slammed up to it. And that is denoting this little areas right here. So when the histogram hits a wall, either the left or the right, that means there's no detail in that area of the image. So I have detail in all of my darks, but there are some areas of my lights that I don't have detail in. So there's several ways I can do it. One, I can go to my histogram, click and drag, and you'll notice those red splotches go away, and you'll notice kind of the mountains moving away from the wall, and that is flattening out this image. Now you'll notice what that's done on my slider is all that's done is moved my slider to a -85. If I double click it, it will zero it out, and you'll see those are back, but the same thing happens in my white slider. So really quick, let's just talk about some of these tone sliders. The highlight and the shadow, This is bringing out detail. This only deals with detail in the lights and in the dark. So the highlight slider, will either remove detail in the whites or bring it back. The shadow slider will either darken the darks and remove detail or bring it back. That's all it does. And so we can just kind of set those where we want them to be. And you can see this image is getting kind of a flat look to it. The whites and the blacks, they are determining where the white point is. So I can bring it all the way up, and you'll notice my histogram has slammed all the way to the right. Or I can move it more to center, and I can flatten this out. Same with darks. I can slam my histogram all the way to the left, so I'm turning these dark areas into pure black, and that's denoted by blue. The highlights is denoted by red, blacks is noted by blue. But I want to flatten this image out, remember? So I bring this up here. So you can see I have this flat image, but what that does is it gives me these kind of smooth tones where the image has this kind of smooth feel to it, not a really harsh or contrasty image. Now I'm going to add contrast again, but contrast is different. What contrast is doing is it's adding separation between the darks and the lights. And so that's going to give me the kind of crunch, I like to call it crisp or crunch, to the image. But before we do that, we are going to go to our HSL. So HSL is our hue, saturation, and luminance panel. We want to go to hue. And what hue is, all hue is changing the color of the color. So hue changes the color of the color. So if I go to my greens here, I want to change the color of my greens. So you can see how I'm making them more pastel. I can go brighter here, more yellowy greens, or I can just kind of drop that down. Saturation is the depth of that color, how deep we want to make it. And then luminance is the brightness of the color. So if I come here to orange, it's going to start to brighten things up. Now notice their lips. Dark, oh my goodness, or light. So if I come in here, I just want to lighten up the skin tones just a little bit. Okay? So that's all I'm going to do here. Now I'm going to add some contrast. So if I come in through here and I bring up my contrast, okay, so we can see we're adding contrast. I'm a little too bright in my color. So what I'm going to do is, instead of going to individual colors, I'm going to take the vibrance down. Now what vibrance does is it kind of just takes the top end of every color that's kind of popping and drop it down. Saturation moves all colors equally. So that basically could go to a black and white if I wanted. Double click that to zero that out. But with vibrance, I'm just going to take off the top ends of all of the colors. And then I'm just going to add just a touch of warmth, just a touch right there. Okay, so let's do a before and after. So there's the after, there's the before. There's the after, there's the before. Now, you might be thinking, you know what, I want a little more black in this image. I want a little more dark point in this image. And you could do that. You could pull this down. Whatever you want to do, you can start to kind of tweak and do these things. Let's move to my next image. Now, I'm not going to explain all the sliders again. Let me just kind of move through them quickly, and I'll talk about it just quickly here as I go. I'm going to bring up my brightness. Okay, I've got that clipping coming in. I'm going to do that through the highlights. So I'm going to drop that down. Okay, I'm going to lift my shadows. I'm going to, on my whites, okay, I want to flatten those whites out or pull the histogram away from the wall. Blacks are already pretty good, but I'm going to do that here. Now you'll notice I've got a little bit of someone's sleeve. Now this person is holding my reflector. I have a reflector bouncing light into their face. So I'm going to go into the crop tool, and I'm going to crop that in just a bit, and maybe even just leave a little corner there. It doesn't matter to me. Okay, I'm going to go into my HSL. I'm going to go into my hue, and I'm going to bring those greens down. Change the color of those greens. If I wanted to, I could brighten the greens. I could come over here and add brightness to them, which I like quite a bit, right? So we go from that to that, which really lightens up the image because there's a lot of green around them. Okay, and then here, I'm going to come in here and just warm it. But then in the vibrance, I'm just going to take off the tops of everything. Okay, so there's that image. Now, let me add a little bit of contrast. I'm not quite done. I just noticed that. I just want to get a little bit more contrast in there. So let's do a before. And let's do an after. So can you see that, how I'm getting that pastel green? I'm getting the squishing, maybe is a good word for it, of that dynamic range, and just getting more of a film type look, a fresh air, name of the presets, look to my images. Okay, so here we go. We're going to raise the exposure just a bit. Okay, same thing. We are going to drop our highlights. We are going to lift our shadows. We are going to drop our whites, flatten those out. Okay, that might be a little too much on my blacks. Okay, I'm going to actually brighten this just a little bit more before I move away. All right, so let's go to HSL. Same thing. I'm going to go into my hues. Now, one thing I'm noticing, if you'll notice, there are some blues in her dress. So when you have a white in a shadow, oftentimes that will start to get kind of a cool tone to it. And so what we can do, we can go into our saturation and we can go to our blues, and I can crank it, and I can see that her dress does have some blue tones in it. And here I am saturating that blue tone. But if I go here, I actually desaturate that blue tone. Now, what could pose a problem here is if she has some blue flowers. Those blue flowers will also desaturate. So there's a couple of solutions to that. One of them would be to not care and not worry about it. Another solution would be to go to the adjustment brush, okay, and instead just come in here and do a desaturation right through here and just paint over the dress. And that's going to do the same thing. That won't work if you have an ivory dress or an off-white dress. But then if you have an ivory and off-white dress, you probably are not going to have as heavy of a blue tone or cool tone in those whites. So that's just something to be aware of. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, so now let's go to our luminance and let's just brighten up those greens just a bit. Not a lot. And let's brighten up the skin tones just a bit. Not a lot. Okay, we'll come back here. We want to add some contrast to this image. Okay, let's take off the top ends. So our vibrance, oops, I went way too much on that. Right there, and a touch of warmth. Okay, let's look at the before, and let's look at the after. Before, after. And again, as I'm looking at this, my eye's thinking, I want a little bit darker black, or I want a little bit more contrast. Purely personal. You can go back and you could start to get your black points back. You could actually get rid of it less, whatever you want to do. Okay, let's go to our next one. I'm going to move through this one even quicker so you don't have to, you're getting the idea, I hope, of flattening things out. Now this could also be done with the tone curve here. So I could grab this point and drag it up, and you'll see what it's doing to my histogram. It's moving that mountain away. I could grab here and pull down, and it's moving my mountain away. And then I could mess with my midtones through here. So the tone curve is, the sliders in the tone curve, in essence, are going to do the same thing. Different images do better with different panels that you use to edit. So on the greens, same thing. I'm going to take those greens down, and on my on my luminance, I'm going to go brighten my greens. I'm going to brighten up those skin tones just a little bit, and then let's add some contrast to this image. All right, so now I've done this. It's looking a little too bright to me, so I'm going to just turn it down just a smidge. And then, like I have been doing, just take a little bit off the top. Okay, so there's a before. There's an after. Now, let me just kind of do one more. Let's do let's do this one. So this image I was actually shooting through the tree, so I'm getting a little bit of foreground in this one, which I really like. So I'm going to brighten this image here. I am going to drop my highlights, raise my shadows, drop my whites, raise my blacks. Okay, that all self-explanatory right through there. Then I'm going to go to hue, and I am going to change the color of my greens. And I'm going to go quite a bit in this one because I really want to accentuate that. Okay, my luminance on my greens, I'm going to brighten those up. Brighten my skin just a touch, okay, and add some contrast here. Now I'm starting to get some really kind of bright speckled spots, or not speckled, but patches of color. I'm going to go in here with my vibrance and just knock those down just a bit, and then I'm going to warm the entire image. Let me darken that just a bit. Okay, so there's a before, there's an after. There's a before, and there's an after. Now, if I was thinking, you know what, her face, I just wish it was a little bit brighter, I could go to my adjustment brush. I could go to brighten right here. And these are some adjustment brush presets that I've created, and I'll put a link to those in the notes. But I could come in here and just kind of lighten her face. So let's zoom out of that and get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so before, after. So I hope you can see how easy this is to get this look in your images. In fact, when you create a preset, or when you have presets that do this, it becomes even easier. So let me show you that really quick. Let me go ahead and reset all of these images, undoing that work that I've done. And so let's say, for example, that I just import an entire shoot into Lightroom, not Photoshop, into Lightroom. I've just imported them, and I'm right here. So these are raw images, untouched, straight from the camera, freshly imported into Lightroom. And if you have presets, the really great thing about presets is that you can, number one, apply often used settings to your images quickly, but number two, apply often used settings to a lot of images quickly. So I've just imported this shoot, and when you're in the library module in the grid mode, which is where I'm at, we see the images laid out in a grid, you will have saved presets over here. And if you come to Fresh Air, you will see my Fresh Air presets. Now the workflow, these are things that you can choose to do. These are things that are often used, but the color, this is where it goes in and adjusts the HSL panel. So I like 4. There are lots of different options. Some are more green, some make a lot of different changes. I like number 4 the best. Okay, so I click that, and what it's going to do is it's going to run through all of these images and adjust my HSL panel like that. So that makes it quick and easy. Then I'll come back and I will apply crispness. Now this is the contrast, kind of getting a little bit more of a deeper black tone without going too far to the black tone on all of the images. And then the last one I'll apply is the softness right here. Now you'll see I have these broken down into workflow, color, crispness, and then highlights and shadows. And so I do this so that you can adjust it how you want. I also have grain there, but that's really if you want that film look. I don't use the grain a lot. Some people do. But let me add the soft, and you can see how that changes these images quickly. And that flattens them out. So if I go into the develop module, let's say on this first one, all I have to do now is raise my brightness, and that image is done. Let's move to my next one. Here, same thing. Raise my brightness, and that image is done. Oh, remember the crop I had to do. Right there, that image is done. Go to my next one, right here. Brighten it up just a bit. Same thing. So all of those adjustments that I made while we worked together, which one else? I did this one right here. All of those adjustments that I've made really quickly with by using, lighten up her face. I've made really quickly by using presets. And so you can create your own presets. I've got the fresh air presets, and like I said, you've got many different options over here to choose from to get the color just right, but they really make your workflow move so much quicker. And so I'll put a link in the show notes to my fresh air presets. I'll even put a coupon in there for $10 off them if you want them. Otherwise, you can create your own presets, whatever you want to do. But I hope this has helped to show you kind of how to get that film look, how to create images that have that kind of flattened out or pastel greens, flattened out whites and darks, squished colors, and just really get a look that I really like, and I know a lot of people like it as well. So I hope this video's been helpful for you. Don't forget to subscribe. I know everybody asks, but you know, it's important. It helps our videos be found on YouTube by having more subscribers. So hit subscribe, and I hope you really can use these techniques to not only speed up your workflow, but to find a look that you like with your images. Take care.